Skye Squad, we are back in the building. Yes, and this time we got to talk about the Real Housewives of the Atlanta, okay? The Atlanta ladies are back, season 13, episode 2. Kenya Moore, LaToya Forever, or LaToya Ali, okay, I guess I should say, are dragging Drew Sidora for filth. Poor Drew Sidora, okay? What did she do to deserve all of this shade, okay? Well, we're going to get into that in just a second because we also learned that her husband is spying on her, okay? And I don't know, this whole situation was crazy to me. This was a good episode. I got to get into that. But before we actually really dive in, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell button, and join the texting community so I can send you a text message as soon as a new video drops. Now, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and stage dive into what we got to talk about with this episode. Y'all know what to do. Let's go ahead and rate this episode, okay? I'm going to tell y'all, I'm going to give it a 9. Let me tell you why I'm going to give it a 9. Because I felt like we came back with a very strong episode 2, okay? Can't give it a 10 yet because I felt like we have a ways to go throughout the season. But to me, this felt like an episode of The Real Housewives of Atlanta. It felt like a true episode of The Real Housewives of Atlanta. And it almost felt like the first season of a show. And it felt fresh in that regard. There was something about it, and I honestly have to tell you guys, I think it's the new ladies adding fresh perspectives, new storylines, and new situations to the mix. It felt like a restart, a refresh to me. And I have to tell you guys, I was absolutely here for it, okay? Now, I'm gonna take away a point because I kind of felt like this was two different shows, okay? It seemed like Cynthia, Drew, LaToya, and Marlo and Kenya were in one show. And it felt like Porsha and Kandi were in a completely different show. Now, I understand why this had to be the case because of the pandemic, okay? And then with Porsha doing all the traveling and then going to jail, it was probably going to be hard for her to connect with the other ladies given that all of that was going on. So I understand that from her. I didn't quite get that with Kandi, why she wasn't present in much of the events, but maybe she had other things going on as the storyline indicates this week. But there were a couple of other little hiccups with the story, and we'll sort of get to those as we go through, specifically with Drew, but I'll touch on that in just one second. But let me know what you guys would rate the episode. I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to say about it because, you know, sometimes y'all be a lot more critical than I am, okay? So let's go ahead and stage dive right on into it. So Kenya and Cynthia are getting together, and we learned that LaToya is coming over, and it almost feels like, is it just me? But it almost feels like Cynthia is feeling a little bit jealous of LaToya's very fast connection with Kenya. Now, in seeing the two ladies connect, it's very obvious to me why the two of them would become fast friends. But for Cynthia, it almost feels in my spirit like she's giving Toya a little bit of the side eye. I say Toya, LaToya. Y'all know what I'm saying. And I love that LaToya was actually Kandi's friend first, and now she is labeled as Kandi's friend that Kenya stole, okay? I am here for it. I feel like these editors are taking a cue from the Real Housewives of Potomac editors with a little bit of shade there, and I'm all the way here for it, okay? We learned that Mark is going through a tabanca, okay? And just to refresh, okay, it is a Caribbean term which stands for a painful feeling of unrequited love, okay? So that would explain his behavior for the past 2 years. Okay, all right. Well, Kenya describes Mark as a high conflict individual. Now that's odd. Would you guys consider him a high conflict individual? Because some people I feel like would consider her a high conflict individual, but maybe two high conflict individuals don't work well together. Although I do have to say, she seems more high conflict with relation to the rest of the cast and less with her man. She does seem to be someone who wants to be subservient or submissive, I should say is a better term, to her man. And that's not a bad thing when you have a man that appreciates it, and clearly he does not, okay? Now, we go to visit Porsha after her arrest via the phone. She calls Lauren and her mom to see baby P-Log. We learn about the whole arrest. This is, again, where we start to feel like this show is a little bit disjointed because Porsha's storyline is so distinctly different from what's happening with the rest of the ladies. And I have to tell you guys, You know, as we have Kenya Moore doing the press rounds for Real Housewives of Atlanta, it's very interesting to hear her commentary about Strippergate in contrast with what we're seeing, the work that we're seeing Porsha doing on the show. It just feels dated for some reason. It feels like Porsha's in a more progressive storyline, and while Kenya's doing press, she's talking about the Strippergate stuff, but it kind of feels like it's old. Does that make sense? Let me know if I'm the only one who's thinking that way. I don't know. It could just be me. So we finally get our introduction to Drew Sidora. We learned that Drew was introduced to Cynthia via Eva. So thank you, Eva, for leaving us with something in your absence. We appreciate you for that. We learned that Drew has worked with Leon as well, which is Cynthia's baby daddy, okay? And when asked if she's met Kenya Moore, no, she has not, okay? To me, that was a little bit of a setup on Cynthia's behalf because I felt like I don't know. It just kind of felt like she was setting Drew up to say something shady with regards to Kenya Moore's age. And I felt like Drew kind of tiptoed and tap danced around that. But ultimately, I felt like she fell into the trap of talking about the age difference, okay? Now, in this scene is where we get an interesting little editing note where we get a rewind that is supposed to be from 8 hours ago. Now, this is one of those instances where I told you guys earlier in the chat where I said, you know, I'm gonna have to take a point away because of some issues that I have with the editing. Now, I think anybody with a brain can see that this whole scene with her from 8 hours earlier could not have occurred 8 hours earlier in any way, shape, or form. She had two totally different hairstyles. There was two totally different things going on. And I understand you guys wanted to have a little creative way to sort of bring this whole situation to light, but I just felt like we didn't need to do that. We could have just went back and just said, you know, a couple of days ago or something like that, because that's when I believe it actually happened. You know, it didn't happen at that same time. The lace fronts were too different, okay? Now, in that flashback, we do see her anniversary. We learned that her husband is an IT entrepreneur. Mama J is a pastor and she's living with them, which has to be difficult. Then the next thing we get to see is a scene with Kandi and Mama Joyce. They're headed to Riley's social distancing graduation. We also see in a later scene that Todd gives Riley a nice little stack of money. Now in this, you know, a lot of people, I've been seeing a lot of comments on social media where people were commenting about how he was so willing to give Riley a stack, but it oftentimes seemed like he was making his actual blood daughter work extra hard in order to get some of those coins. I don't really know how to rationalize that, to be quite honest with you, because I feel like I don't necessarily always see the complexities of the relationship that he has with Riley as juxtaposed with the relationship that he has with his blood daughter. So I can't really comment on it, but I want to know what you guys think. And do you guys have similar thoughts about the way that whole situation went down? Okay, let me know in the comment section down below. Porsha gets home from jail. She's reflecting on Dennis supporting her through the protest, but we learn that the arguments are toxic and simple stuff is taking them to a level 10. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all this. It's interesting that we don't see Dennis in any of the scenes as of yet. Now, I understand that Dennis is not a character on this show, but given that she's telling us that he still lives with her, it's odd that we don't see them together in any of the scenes and we don't see this play out on the show. Because a lot of times, let me tell you, when you work in a visual medium, such as reality television, you want to also, it's a thing where you want to show and tell, okay? So Porsha could tell us that they're having arguments and that they're disagreeing, but it's better if the cameras can show us, okay, that those arguments and disagreements are happening so we can get a better understanding of what is actually happening in their lives. Because otherwise, it just kind of gives me a little bit, I have to give a little bit of a side eye to this situation because I don't quite understand it and it's not making sense to me. However, I will say this. Anytime you get to, you're at a point in a relationship where you guys are arguing about the simplest things and it's making you feel extra toxic, it's probably time to go, okay? Now, we get to Cynthia's Black-owned wine tasting, okay? Cynthia's there with her assistant Chandler. Mike is there. LaToya and Kenya come in like the shade assassins that they are. Are those artificial plants? Are those artificial grapes? I love cold meatballs. I was like, ooh, LaToya, you're doing a lot, okay? You are doing the most with someone that you barely know, okay? Especially for this to be the first time that you get invited to their home. Like, I can't see going to somebody's home. Really, I can't see going to somebody's home and asking if their plants are artificial and saying that the meatballs were cold. Now, I might tell somebody later, but I'm not going to say that right then and there in the scene. Now, some people may find this refreshing, but I think that in real life, it would be off-putting, okay? And that's just how I feel about that. Marlo comes over and immediately the shade starts, okay? We also learned that Kenya feels bad about almost ruining Cynthia's engagement, which is interesting that we get that little flashback. But then LaToya oddly brings up the fact that her sugar daddy bought her first car. Now, ironically, I don't know if this was meant to be a way for Marlo to relate to her, but she did kind of relate to her. It was just a weird little back and forth. LaToya has weird energy to me. It's weird energy. I don't dislike it, but it's just a little bit weird. And I think it's weird simply because I don't understand it. I don't understand her motivations as of yet. She's too new of a character, and I feel like this is where production sort of failed us. Because you have introduced a character who is very feisty, who has a lot to say, has a lot of opinions, and could be quite inflammatory without allowing her the opportunity to speak on herself and her situation in confessionals. Now, I know she's going to be filming confessionals, and she's already filmed some, but what I'm saying here is we missed an opportunity to introduce a new full-time cast member with LaToya, because I feel like she's going to play an integral part to the season. And it just doesn't make any sense to me why we don't get to understand her backstory and how and who she is, because those confessionals really give us more of that opportunity to discover her motivations, why she does what she does. And we're not getting that. So as a viewer, it just kind of feels out of place, her reactions. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. And I just got to be honest with you guys. Mike is looking at Kenya and LaToya as they're play fighting and tugging on each other's hair. Like, okay. Listen, I don't know what to make of their relationship as of yet. It does seem very fast for them to have clicked like that, but we don't know the dynamics of how long they have been hanging out during the time that they have actually been hanging out. So it's hard to tell, because clearly episode 1 was filmed and some time has passed before we get to the actual actions of episode 2, okay? So just a little bit of disjoint there, okay? Enter Drew and Ralph. And here comes the shade and the dragorization of Drew by two women who do not even know her as of yet, okay? Kenya and LaToya dragged this girl to within an inch of her life upon first meeting her. Kenya says, oh, where does Cynthia get all these strays? But her husband was cute. Now see, Kenya, this is what got you messed up with Phaedra Parks. That amongst other things. But to me, it's kind of like you can't diss the wife and then be overly complimentary of the husband. It just don't look right. You know what I mean? Especially for you to not even really know her that well, but you know she's been on TV before. I guarantee you that. There's nobody in that room that don't know who she is. So to call her a stray is just kind of odd to me. It don't make sense. Why would you say that about her when you clearly know that she's been in the acting world and has quite a few acting gigs, okay? Let's check that, okay? LaToya then comments that Drew has a pet on her head, referencing her lace front, okay? Now, I will admit, there was a lot of hair on her lace front, but that is her personal style, and I didn't think that she looked bad, okay? To be quite honest with you. You know, I know a lot of people were sort of, there was a lot of discussion about Robin Dixon's tiger stripe hair from the Real Housewives of Potomac reunion. It's not that I dislike it. I mean, if you want to be, listen, you got to do your own thing and have your own taste. You know, I just think for the first time that they are meeting this woman, for them to treat her the way that they treated her, I thought it was poor and I thought it was kind of disgusting, to be quite honest with you. So then Marlo oddly is getting up, getting food, and she's talking to LaToya, telling LaToya, whispering in LaToya's ear, telling her not to trust her, only trust her with learning about new words or spelling words or something to that degree. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I'm thinking that's really not smart, because you got to know that LaToya and Kenya, even just on the sight of them for that first time, you got to know that they seem to roll pretty deep for some reason, okay? So that was odd of Marlo to do. Now, we have the whole separation conversation with, you know, LaToya and Drew, and we talked about this on another episode, so I don't really want to go too deep into that, although I do think that this is going to come up later for some reason. But when we get to the actual thing that happened between, you know, Ralph and Drew, we learned that it is actually much more disturbing than we initially thought, okay? Now, we also have Kenya basically talking about how she's filing for a custody action. I don't really know what that means, but I have a feeling we're going to see how this plays out between her and Mark as the episodes go along. So fear not, I would put the definition up here because I feel like, you know, I like to do that. But ultimately, I feel like to get into the specifics, I'm going to wait until next week and the weeks following so that we really get a better understanding of what actually is going to happen betwixt the two of them. Now, Drew and Ralph celebrating their anniversary. She wants a wedding for their 7th anniversary. He's looking like, no, girl. He asks what she thinks is working and not working. And now I always think that this could go really, really right or really, really wrong. And as I predicted, it went really, really wrong, okay? Because she would like more transparency. The gist is, in this situation, they had an argument just last week and he disappeared for 3 days. She thought he was going to his office. Next thing you know, he is at a beach in some other state. She does not know where, okay? And he does not want to tell her. He believes that telling her where he went will do nothing for her, okay? It will not help her in the slightest bit, okay? And finally, he does let the cat out of the bag and say that he went to Tampa. Now, here's the thing. He was real shysty and nasty with her about not telling her where he was. And I just kind of felt like, you know, this man is immature and controlling, okay? Obviously, he wants to disappear on her so that he can sort of have some type of, you know, I just feel like it's a control tactic. You know what I'm saying? Not telling her, keeping her in the dark about certain things. And we'll get into more of this control right now because we're going to talk about the fact that she lets us know that she saw a picture in his phone basically of her sitting in the house because he has cameras in the house to spy on her when he is away. So not only does this man run when they have confrontation, but he also does not tell her where he's going when they have confrontation. And while he won't tell her where he's going to spy on her with cameras that he has placed surreptitiously throughout the house, okay? And I just was like, this is insane to me, okay? This is a new level of stuff that I ain't never heard of before and never seen on reality TV. And Drew, I have to say thank you for bringing it to our attention. But in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, how you gonna disappear and think that's okay? Not tell me where you're going, but then think that it's okay for you to spy on me in my own home while you're away, not telling me where you are while I'm worried about you? That is some low down, dirty stuff right there. And Drew, let me tell you something. This man, listen, I can't tell nobody to get divorced. I can't tell nobody to break up their happy home if you happy with it. But what I will tell you is this behavior is not normal. This behavior is not okay. This behavior is disturbing at the basic level. It's disturbing. And I can't believe that you are even willing to partake in this whole situation, much less put it on national television, because to be quite honest with you, I feel like it's a little bit embarrassing at the same time, because it's like, you don't need to be in this situation, girl. And I just got to say that, because this man to me seems way too immature. Now, it's one thing to have a security system. And let me get to the other part of why this whole thing is disturbing. Because then he deleted the photo off of his phone and then tried to lie about the fact that it ever existed. Now, to me, again, I said a new level of low, and that's it right there. Now, I need to know what y'all think about this whole situation down in the comment section down below. It was the most disturbing thing that I have seen on television in quite some time. But, you know, I mean, I'm done. I'll catch y'all in the next video.